All right. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our Why Try webinar. Really excited for the webinar that we have today. We're going to be talking through some strategies and ideas that connect to some really important topics. And we've got a great panel today that I'm excited to introduce here momentarily. Before I do that, let me introduce myself. My name is Jason Johnson. I represent the Why Try organization. Let me update my name here. And I'll be serving as the moderator here. Our organization's been around for about 20 years. We specialize in helping teach the skills of resilience in a practical and engaging way. We work in all 50 states. We work in multiple countries throughout the world, and we've got a really great network of friends and colleagues that are just incredible professionals and incredible humans that we also get to interact with through these, one of which we're thrilled to have on today. I'll introduce you more formally here, David, but appreciate you being on. The outline for today, we're going to go for about an hour, and we're gonna share some information with you. Before we get started, just a couple quick notes on the format of this webinar. So we are on a webinar link, which means the three of us panelists are the only ones with live cameras and live microphones. The rest of you, we can't see and we can't hear, so we'll lean quite heavily on the chat to be able to interact. So feel free to put a question in or comment in the chat if you have a response to what we're discussing. We'll put up some contact information at the end, and we have some resources we want to share with you as well. But one thing that's helpful, this is a live chat. So one thing that's helpful, if you can double check one specific setting, open up your chat tool where you type in a message, and right above where you type your message, it says to, and then there's a little drop down menu where you select who you're sharing your message with. That should say to everyone. If it doesn't say to everyone, then not everybody can see your comment when you put it in the chat. So go ahead and adjust that so you're sharing comments with everyone. And then once you've done that, let's just go ahead. Let's do our usual emoji check-in. Once you've made that adjustment, type into the chat, just share an emoji that expresses how things are going for you right at this moment in the school year. December's an interesting time in education. December's a fun month, lots of energy in the schools and around December. So hit us with an emoji react to how your December's going so far. Edmund's cold. Oh, I can empathize with all of them.
A little bit of everything I'm seeing.
That's great. I love it. And it looks like everybody got their chat setting adjusted over. So thank you.
Yeah, John looks a little nervous there.
Well, welcome to our webinar today. As I mentioned, my name's Jason Johnson. I represent the Why Try organization. We're the ones that host these. We've been doing these since about 2020. Really fun spaces to get educators and mental health professionals and youth advocates together to talk about some really important topics. Today is no exception. We are going to be discussing chronic absenteeism and student disengagement and how our model can really help and assist with that. Very fortunate to be joined today by two experts. We've got Christian Moore, the founder of the Why Try organization. I'll let him introduce himself a little more formally here momentarily, but in short, Christian's an author, a social worker, and one of the founders of the Why Try organization. We are also fortunate to have David Copperud from California, career educator. I'll introduce you a little more formally, David. We'll probably hear from you just past the halfway mark is probably when we'll throw to you. And David's got some really important insight. He's a real expert in this field around this discussion on student engagement and reducing absenteeism. He's worked for the State Department there, and he consults on a few areas. Really fortunate to have him. So, David, thank you so much for joining. Um, and then myself, I'm Jason Johnson. Worked as a school psychologist in the world of public education prior to coming to the YTRI organization about 10 years ago. And I'm the director of training and research for the YTRI organization and the fortunate moderator of these YTRI webinars. So with that, let's get right into it. Kristen, I'm going to open up some slides here
All right.
and kind of lead into you sharing a little bit of your background and your connection to this topic and specifically to our approach on resilience. As I mentioned, resilience is really our specialty. It's what we've helped people for 2 decades teach clients and students with a really engaging model. And a lot of it kind of comes from your background. So Christian, tell us a little bit more about your history and your approach to this.
Yeah, I appreciate everybody taking time to be here with us today, especially those that are with us internationally. That's very exciting. I'm the author of the book, The Resilience Breakthrough. I've spent many years studying resilience, understanding the need for resilience. Here's a little background on myself. If you want to hit that next slide, Jason. There we go. I grew up in between DC and Baltimore in the 70s and 80s, which was an exciting time to be in that area. Both my parents struggled with some pretty intense mental health issues. I was a special education student. I was illiterate when I was 17 years old. Always struggled with some basic reading, writing skills. And I basically never thought I'd get out of my neighborhood. There wasn't a lot of people with my age with cars. That's me in my Washington Commanders coat. I'm a big Commanders fan. But Jason's team, the Broncos, beat us. I don't know if it was a straight up win, but they ended up beating us. But I'm excited to share with you how I became interested in resilience. Next slide here. There we go. I guess my slides are going a little slow. There we go. If you want to go down a little further. Yeah. So my interest came when I was in graduate school, and I did my thesis on the impact that learning disabilities has on poverty and crime. I learned that over 70% of youth in our youth correction system have learning differences. And I'll tell you what, learning differences, behavioral issues, we all know how that leads to chronic absenteeism, which we'll talk a little bit more about in a moment. But I was just interested in how that impacted so many aspects of from everything from people on welfare to poverty issues. When I heard politicians talk about welfare reform, different things, I never ever heard, even to this day, I never hear learning disabilities mentioned. But when you look up the statistics on it, it's really interesting. Another thing that really influenced my passion for resilience was when I came across the Kauai longitudinal study, that looked at, 2 kids grew up in the same home, same background, same kind of situation. One kid makes it out, the other kid doesn't make it. What's the X factor? And I saw this in my own family. I'm from a family of 12 kids. I'll share a little bit more. I was able to make it out. Some of my siblings didn't. What was the X factor? And they found one of the biggest X factors was the ability to see your problem as a resource. And I remember that just standing out to me. How do you see your problems as a resource? And we know that leads to resilience. So here's my life story. Here's really how I became interested in resilience. I grew up in between Baltimore and DC in a family of 12 kids, 5 brothers, 6 sisters. Both my parents had some mental health challenges. My mom had social phobia, generalized anxiety disorder, had a fear of leaving the house. You have to leave the house to go get food. So there wasn't a lot of food to eat sometimes in my house growing up. Don't tell anyone, but my dad was one of the highest level code breakers at the National Security Agency. You could give my dad any mathematical problem and he could instantly rattle it off the top of his head. My dad was autistic. He was a genius, but he had very little common sense or social skills. If you've ever seen that movie, A Beautiful Mind, you've met my dad. So having two parents with some mental health challenges put me in a situation where I ended up being a street kid. I could hang out till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning on a school night, had very few rules, very few boundaries. One night, I was out late at night and a car pulls up and I hear a voice. And the voice I hear is the voice of a woman who I endearingly call Mama Jackson. It was one of my best friend's moms who sees me out there, late at night.
Christian had so many obstacles that was going on in his home.
She knows what I'm out there doing, and she says, look, don't you ever set foot on our property. I'm going to call the school tomorrow. I'm going to make sure you're not in any of Sean's classes. I remember thinking to myself, dang, I know I'm bad, but I'm not that bad. I can never go to school with him ever again.
When you see a child that's hungry, there's no happiness there. You're thinking about what other kids have that they don't have. Okay? But when you see a child that's hungry and you give that child some food, you see that child's disposition change.
Yeah. Going to school was very difficult for me. As a child, I was diagnosed with ADHD, conduct disorder, and severe learning disabilities. When I was sitting in a classroom, oftentimes, I was embarrassed. When I got called out loud, I would act up and get in trouble instead of embarrassing myself because I didn't know how to read or didn't know how to do basic math. So, for me, it was like going to the doctor's office every day, going to school. I had a hard time telling time. When I was even 17 years old, I couldn't tell time on a hand clock. To me, 4:45 equals 25 minutes to 5, but they tell me a quarter's 15. But how could a quarter not equal 25?
When we concentrate on that more to make sure that a child's needs are provided for, then that child will thrive. I know that I'm loved, and I know that this person is going to feed me to make sure I have what I need.
Mama Jackson took over.
One of his teachers in high school said to him that he would never go to college. Christian went to college.
Growing up in between DC and Baltimore, I saw many social problems in my community, in my neighborhood. I saw poverty. I saw hopelessness at times. I even saw some violence. But I remember walking to school one morning and literally seeing one of my best friends evicted from his house. His furniture was all throughout his front yard. I could see the heartbreak in his eyes, his parents' eyes. And I knew in that moment, I wanted to be a social worker. And I knew I could not become a social worker unless I went to college. But I was told college was probably not going to be an option for me with a 6th grade math level, a 7th grade reading and writing level. Statistically, I had a better chance of playing the NBA and becoming LeBron James.
His experience was at the other side of the track. Life was different. Life was unique. And the kids like that, they have to survive.
I struggled getting through college math. College math is a requirement to make it through school. I remember that feeling in my stomach when I knew I couldn't graduate.
They're not going to let me graduate because I can't do math. I can't count money. I can't numbers. I get confused and all of these things. He was like a bobcat in a cage.
So I came up with something called the No F game plan. And this was a strategy that I used to make it through school with my learning differences.
He made himself big. He made himself known to others. I'm here. Hey, I may not have what you have, but I have a street smart.
I would go to every class. I would sit on the front row. I would do all the homework assignments. And I would do enough extra credit to get a D minus. I would shoot for A's, but I learned in college you get just as much credit with a D minus.
And his paper is not polished. Other students get an A. Christian gets B, sometimes a C. But he has ideas. He has a substance. And Why Try program that she ran with and helped incredible number of students and the teachers and administrators came out of a classwork.
He created an environment to teach teachers how to really deal with students that may have significant functional limitations.
I persevered. Luckily, I knew what resilience was. I knew how to take my academic challenges and use them as a reason to knock down barriers, to focus on what was right with me, not what was wrong with me.
The vision of Why Try, and I think this thing is called the roller coaster ride. And I'm so glad that when he fell off of that roller coaster, that he got back on.
Dr. Virgil Wood, civil rights icon and close friend to Dr. Martin Luther King, learned about Why Try's impact and decided to honor Mama Jackson with the National Rosa Parks Save the Children Award. Mama Jackson gave me a safe and loving environment so I could thrive. She didn't get rid of my problems at home, at school, in my neighborhood. She showed me how to use those problems as a fuel source to put one foot in front of another and create a productive outcome with the opposition. Despite my many challenges, I was able to get a master's degree with a 6th grade math level and a 7th grade reading and writing level, and become a licensed clinical social worker. As a school social worker, I quickly noticed it was very difficult to engage students like myself, especially students coming to school with no paper, no pencil, no notebook, totally disengaged from the academic process. I noticed doing verbal cognitive intervention didn't reach many of these students. One day my colleague pointed out to me that most of the students I'm working with are visual learners, not auditory learners. So I thought to myself, wait a minute, I'm an artist. Why would I not take everything and make it visual for the student? Most of these kids are visual learners. So I decided to take evidence-based mental health practice and deliver it in visual metaphors. And I noticed once I did it in a visual metaphor, the student locked in on the visual picture. It kept them engaged. They were far more interested in what I was doing. I knew I had the student in that moment. Using visual metaphors to teach things like your decisions have consequences, how to tear off your labels, how to understand your emotions and the emotions of others. And what was really exciting to me is sometimes 2 or 3 weeks later, they could remember the details of what we did a few weeks before in counseling. And that's when I knew we had that engagement. Then we decided to reinforce the picture with music and physical activities to increase that engagement even more. We took brief solution-focused therapy, reality therapy, strength-based counseling, and combined it into a learning method that any educator or counselor could use to reach students, especially students that are having a hard time answering the question, why try? But as you can see, I was very blessed to have people like Dr. Mike Seipel show up. Definitely Mama Jackson. You know, I wouldn't be here talking to you today if it wasn't for Mama Jackson, her sacrifice. You know, she focused on what was right with me, not what was wrong with me. And it had a huge impact on my life. She just checked in with me a couple days ago. She keeps a close eye on me to this very day. So yeah, I was very lucky to have her in my life. You know, I shared with you first couple of years I was a therapist. It was frustrating because at the end of the hour, I would tell the student, you know, I'd ask the student, what did you learn today? And they pretty much would tell me whatever I wanted to hear to get the heck out of my office as fast as they could. But when I made it visual for them, and, you know, they were able to engage with it a lot more. You know, most of these kids are visual learners. So again, I just started hand drawing everything in counseling for the students, and that greatly increased the engagement, helped them, you know, stay focused. One of the first pictures I teach is a picture of a roller coaster ride called the reality ride. Do you want to hit on that one, Jason? There we go. All right. Yeah, so It's so important that students understand, basic decision-making skills. We know that has a huge impact on absenteeism. This is one that is used all the time around absenteeism. So this picture right here just shows kind of the ups and downs of the human condition, the ups and downs of life. I often say to the student, what's the definition of reality? They'll say, reality is I got kicked out of class. Reality is I'm missing too much school. Reality is I'm fighting. It could be a lot of different things. But reality is what's going down. Reality is what's happening. So I talk to them about their challenges in life, at home, at school, with peers, the things that are getting them in trouble. At the top of the roller coaster, it could be skipping school, using drugs, stealing, fighting, running away. I'll say you do those things, you go up, you have that rush, and then reality kicks in. What's the reality of skipping school? I have to go to in-school suspension. I had to repeat the ninth grade. What's the reality of fighting? I got suspended. And so you can see their uphill challenges, what's getting them in trouble, the consequences. The loop represents the problems they keep doing over and over. And then we show them how to get on that track to opportunity, freedom, self-respect. We believe that's the answer to the question, why try? If you try in life, you'll literally have more opportunity, you'll have more freedom, you'll have more self-respect. At the end of the hour, I would say to the student, what does this picture teach? We've put over 3 million students through this picture right here. We've never seen a child go, I don't understand this picture. And so I think being someone with severe learning disabilities, I like to keep things simple, keep things clean, keep it in a way that they can really connect to, understand, very quickly. And what's fun is even years later, we notice kids can explain these pictures back to us. So that's the first picture here. All the other pictures show them how to get on that track to opportunity, freedom, self-respect. This next one here is we want to teach them how to tear off their labels. When I first worked with students, they have many of these labels right here: failure, druggie, learning disabled, dumb, lazy, rebellious, attitude, troublemaker. So we want them to identify any of these labels they have. I'll say, do you have any other labels? Usually the one word they give me will give me more information why they're in my office than a list of psychosocial histories. And then I'll have them fill up that other can there on the top with the real me. What I like about myself, what other people like about me, my strengths, goals, dreams. And then you can see the discussion questions that we ask them. My favorite one is number 3, focus on your strengths. Project the label that you want. All of us, nobody wants to be seen with those negative labels. And I'll tell you, we all know relationships is one of the most powerful thing in the world. If that is the most powerful thing that motivates these students, is the relationship. And this metaphor for me has been the most powerful metaphor to really, really develop that connection, that relationship that really, really motivates the student. Jason, do you want to add anything here to tearing off labels?
Maybe just a little. Really, really nice explanation. So this highlights, and I'll give you a little bit more of a complete list here momentarily, but what we're doing with these visual metaphors, they're simple teaching devices. We use them to lead discussions, and every one of these connects back to a big picture skill of resilience. And so what we're doing whenever we're addressing specific challenges, we're always trying to figure out what skill of resilience can assist with that challenge. And so if we have students that aren't showing up, it can be a lot of things. If it's a question of decision making and not understanding consequences, then that first visual metaphor is a great place to start. If it's a situation where they are struggling seeing the value in themselves or struggling seeing how they fit within the school community there, then we may need to help empower them to tear off negative labels and find a positive sense of self, that real me. And so each one of these, as you look at them, imagine and recognize that they represent a bigger picture skill of resilience. And that's really kind of at the heart of our formula of what we're trying to teach students, is we're ultimately teaching them the skills of resilience, and these visual metaphors are such a powerful piece. So for this particular one, if I'm kind of breaking it down into the 2 parts, it's number 1, can I empower students to tear off negative labels? And we see those hitting so early now. We see kindergartners and first graders that already have attached negative labels to themselves. So can we empower students to tear those off? And then can we help students see and recognize the goodness in themselves that we see, the value in themselves that we see. We describe that as the real me. And then can we help them align their behavior with that recognized value in themselves? And that becomes a great pattern towards a kind of aligning behavior with these values, these skills of resilience that we're teaching. What else do you want to say on it, Christian?
Yeah, I think good on that one. Yeah, just want to emphasize that the purpose of all these metaphors is one, that they visually see it, they hear it in music, they physically experience it. So we want to make it relevant. And I think one of our successes, I want to say, Jason, with chronic absenteeism, is our relevancy component. Is the intervention relevant to the student? And Jason, why don't you share around how we go about the formula there?
Yeah, I'll give you the kind of our formula towards that. Before I do that, I want to kind of give you the master cheat list of our skills of resilience. And then I'll give you our formula towards resilience. But I think this is a really practical and a useful way for anybody, whether you're delivering white tri content or not. I think it's a really practical approach if you can break resilience down into its individual parts. So here's 10 specific skills of resilience that we specifically try to teach. And this isn't intended to be a complete list. We know there's more skills of resilience than this, but this is a real nice, I think, starting point. So decision-making and consequences, really key skill. Positive self-image, how do we value ourselves? Emotional regulation, raise your virtual hand if you work with students that struggle controlling their defense mechanisms when their emotion gets elevated. You can hit the virtual hand raise button on your React there. This is a huge one, right? Motivation and resilient mindset. Can we help students change how they view their challenges and develop a habit of not giving up when things become difficult? Resilient individuals still experience challenges the same way that a non-resilient individual might. That resilient mindset is the perspective that allows a resilient individual to view their challenges differently and not give up. Peer influence and positive relationships, this is a huge one. Problem solving, resilient individuals are typically good problem solvers. Hard work and determination. Can I put sustained effort into something and see it through to completion? We have kind of an epidemic of apathy right now, and we have so many students that give up, check out, stop showing up as soon as something gets difficult, frustrating, or unappealing to them. And so one of the key skills is, can we teach the value of sustained effort and work completion? We describe that as hard work and determination. Responsibility and self-discipline. Raise your virtual hand if you currently work with students that struggle following the rules, laws, and guidelines of society. I see most of the hands go up, right? This is another big one. And so we want to teach the value and recognize that even rules that may feel frustrating or we may not fully understand, when we learn to follow a certain set of communal or classroom or group rules, it builds within us a discipline that represents kind of a unique muscle that's required for resilience. It takes discipline to say no when it's unpopular. It takes discipline to get back up and try again if we fall down. It takes discipline to walk away from an unhealthy situation. Support systems and relationship building. How do we support one another and build relationships in a positive way and connect with humans that will help us be stronger and achieve our goals? Future-ready vision and self-efficacy. This is kind of the big picture view of resilience. Can I help my students see a vision, a goal, something they want to accomplish down the road? Can I help them see how right now they're preparing to move towards that? And then self-efficacy is kind of this clinical term that really means kind of the confidence that you can influence your outcomes. So like if I believe that putting effort into something will influence an outcome that I want, then I'm more likely to engage. The opposite of self-efficacy would be considered like hopelessness. And hopelessness is kind of the great destroyer of resilience. So when we have kiddos, that's kind of the easiest eye test for resilience. If we see students that have become hopeless, there's a good chance that resilience has been pushed out of them. And that's when they're really, I think, begin to become really high risk. Before I have Christian show you just a couple more of the visuals, I want to give you a little cheat sheet to a simple formula we use, but it's a very effective formula. This is a simple formula that we follow towards kind of the foundation of resilience. We call it the new 3 Rs, and we use it as the foundation of our approach. You can apply this simple formula towards any content that you deliver. It's particularly effective in a resilience model, though. The new 3 Rs are as follows. The first R is the relationship. Everything we do is focused on connection and relationships. And one of the things that I think is so critical in both engagement and reducing absenteeism is having good relationships at the core. And one way to consider this, let me ask you this question. Raise your virtual hand if you've ever had the following experience. Have you ever had the experience of having a student who would work for you when they wouldn't work for other grown-ups in the building? Have you ever had a student that would work for you when they wouldn't work for other grown-ups in the building? I'm seeing most of the hands go up. So if you've had that happen, you've already experienced a really important and a really unique win within the world of education. So my follow-up question is, if you were to like simplify the why and share that, what could you share that in the chat? Like in its simplest terms, what was your secret? How did you get a student to work for you when they didn't want to work for another grown-up in the building that you were in? Anybody willing to share in the chat? What's your secret? What's your trade secret? So he knew I cared about him. Great statement. And then you can start to dig into well, how did he know? Relationship, making them feel like they're important, build up the relationship, talking to them, trust, snacks, building positive relationship, getting to know them, acceptance, establishing everything you're describing that facilitated that really important event almost always connects back to our connection and our relationship. And so these are really, really vital pieces. The relationship has to be at the heart of any good approach to improving engagement, reducing absenteeism. So that's the first R in our formula. And this is the one, most people agree on this, but this is really easy to lose track of. We actually do a full transformational leadership approach I'll maybe talk about towards the end, that's all designed to help faculty improve their approach to student relationships, to be more intentional and more relationship driven. Most educators are good at it and believe in the value of it, but we have so many boxes to check, it's easy to kind of push it into the background. The next R is the R of relevance. Christian mentioned this. Just at a high level, relevance is how we help our students see how what we're sharing with them is relevant to their lives. And when relevance isn't present, we oftentimes see student disengage. If they don't understand the point, the purpose, the value, or how this connects to modern life in 2025, then it's going to be hard for them to see a vision or have an interest in connecting. Now, there's a couple of important approaches to this. One is kind of the big picture approach. Can I help see broad, big picture relevance towards what I'm presenting on? Can I help them see vision down the road? The second half of relevance really involves specifically how we deliver our content. What strategies do we use when we deliver our content? What are we doing to engage? Are we using things like music, activities, stories and metaphors, media and technology, visual metaphors, visual approaches? Ultimately, are we teaching them in ways that they like to learn? And are we considering generational and cultural relevance towards our audience that we're delivering the content to? So we put those two things together, relationship plus relevance, and it gives us our third R, which is the R of resilience. And resilience is all about how a person responds to adversity. It's that thing that keeps us moving forward, the ability to bounce back when you have every reason to shut down, but you fight on. So that simple model, relationship plus relevance equals resilience, lies at the core anytime we're delivering or trying to teach the skills of resilience. And then to circle back to what Christian introduced here momentarily, or just a few moments ago, and I'm going to throw back to you on this, Christian, to see if there's any others that you want to highlight.
Yeah.
So then what we've done is we've taken resilience, broken it down into these specific skills, right? And then we have a suite of visual metaphors that help us lead discussions. We use activities. We have hundreds of activities, video clips, media, all to help make it engaging within that model. So here's a few more of our visual metaphors. Each one of these connects to a skill. Christian, I'm just going to go through kind of quickly so we can get to David. But if you want me to stop on one of them, let me know.
Yeah, just stop on the crab pot real quick when you're done.
Okay. So we have defense mechanisms as part of emotional regulation. This is building a resilient mindset. This is the one Christian mentioned.
Yeah, this one is probably one of the ones I think that's key to chronic absenteeism. We see a lot of success with this one with that. We know peer pressure is a huge thing around that, the influence of their peers. And, with this one, I'll say this is a tribute to my home state of Maryland. You put a bunch of live crabs in a pot. Why can't the crabs get out of the pot? The other crabs are reaching up and pulling them down. So I'll say, hey, your friends you're skipping school with, you're doing drugs with, fighting, running away. All they're doing is they're pulling you down. They're keeping you in that pot. Every question that you ask the student is written around the visual metaphor. What are the reasons for staying in that pot? What will my future be like when I get out? My favorite one is the bottom one there to talk to kids about warning. If you try to get out of this pot, you will be attacked. I don't know about you guys, but the more good I try to do in this world, the more you're attacked sometimes. And so, Jason, I just wanted to emphasize this is a really key one to engagement and absenteeism. And so
it's also a great one to address the impact of negative peer pressure, negative peer influence, which we know impacts that. We got problem solving. This is part of our hard work and determination. This one helps us have a discussion about seeing the value of rules, laws, guidelines. The weight that builds the muscle represents things that are expected of us that we follow as we build that discipline. The balloon represents things that get us in trouble, things we've given up on that doesn't build any muscle. Getting plugged into positive systems of support. And then this wall represents the journey we're trying to take our students on. The student on the ground level has a limited view. That wall represents challenges in their life, and he can't see anything beyond that. And as we apply these skills of resilience, it can move us to the top of that wall and it can shift our perspective. And when we start to develop self-efficacy and resilience and start to see things a little differently, we view our challenges differently and we begin to see purpose and vision for ourselves down the road. And that creates and leads to opportunity, freedom, and self-respect, which is kind of the representation, the manifestation of resilience being taught. So all of this is kind of a big picture overview, but I think the most, if I'm breaking it down into simple bullet point takeaways from a practical standpoint, understand how to break resilience down to smaller ingredients, specific skills of resilience, figure out an engaging model to teach those skills, and make sure it's built on the foundation of relationship, relevance, and resilience. That's like us sharing the secret sauce with you. I want to hear a little bit now we've got a unique opportunity to hear from a real expert and somebody that's had a real impact on how we understand this challenge. And real fortunate to have David Copperwood with us. David spent years championing youth across California, worked for the California Department of Education, still works with them, I believe technically retired, but David still is actively working with CASQA and SARB and different organizations throughout the state, addressing some real significant challenges. David, I'm wondering if you could share a little bit of your insight around this model and this approach, and what are some of the things you've learned through your career that really can make a big difference when it comes to these challenges of engagement and absenteeism, because two of those are probably the most universal challenges educators throughout the country experience. David, what do you think? And by the way, thank you so much for being on with us. You're muted, David.
Yeah, I think you're still muted, David.
The mute button is slippery sometimes. I get caught on them on my own as well. If you can see the microphone, sometimes click in the microphone with your finger, David. Let me see if it'll allow me. Let me see if I can unmute you. Here, try this. Does that give you any access, David? You're still muted. We'll see. Well, we'll see if we get you unmuted. In the meantime, Christian, maybe speak
Can you
a
hear
little
me now?
bit.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, there you are, David.
Oh, great. That was just so hard. I had to work to get to the unmute. But yes, I just wanted to say that the slide that meant the most to me was you can see over the wall. And I think so many kids need to see that, because they can't see over the wall. They're stuck. And in California, we had this real spike in chronic absenteeism because of the pandemic. We had a lot of kids that were suffering mentally due to that, and they couldn't get past the stress, the anxiety, the depression, and they need something like Why Try. And can you still see me or hear me?
We can hear you, yeah.
Well, great. So anyway, I just can't say enough about Why Try, because it's a tool that all districts need right now in California. And they need it to address the kids that are disengaged, the kids that aren't attending. And if you don't give the school districts that tool, they're not going to make progress on engaging kids, especially those subgroups of kids that are already disadvantaged. Because even though we're showing slight improvement coming back from the pandemic, we're not improving with the kids that are disadvantaged. And the kids that are like Christian, the kids that have had that kind of experience, and we have more of them now than we've ever had before. So I just think this is a very crucial tool to helping districts get back on track.
David, I appreciate the insight on that. Do you have any thoughts or any insight on? I know you kind of see what really works, and then maybe what isn't quite as effective. What are anything come to mind? Like if somebody's just picking your brain on what are some of the things or the models that you've seen that have been effective, or are there any key ingredients that you feel like are critical to a successful approach to trying to reduce absenteeism in particular?
I think in California, the county offices have a crucial role in this, because they're to support the school districts in reducing chronic absenteeism. And in California, my model is Tulare County Office of Education. They've taken Why Try and used it in all the districts in the county in various ways to support student support. And we've seen in that county great reductions in chronic absenteeism because the students have received the support they need so that they can achieve. So my wish is that more counties in California would adopt Why Try and use that to support students who have this barrier to their attendance at school. And until we have successfully addressed the social and emotional learning needs of students, we're not going to get back to the kind of attendance we had before the pandemic. And our attendance wasn't great before the pandemic, but now it's a crisis in California, and we need that social emotional support so we can engage students in school again, especially the disadvantaged groups like your foster youth, your Black youth, your American Indians, your children in poverty, your homeless students. All these groups of students, we're not making progress with them because we're not using something like Why Try.
Thank you so much. And just to give a little more insight on the Tulare model, we've had them on a few times, and we've continued to be so impressed with them. But they've got really good leadership there, and they've taken kind of a simultaneous both macro and micro approach to reducing. They're offering support and training at high level at the county level, but then they also have really good, well trained on ground kind of boots on the ground support that are offering a really good model within the schools. And so they go in and they take this approach that we've given you a high level overview, and they make it really engaging. They focus their relationship focused first, and have really effective practitioners that go in and teach the skills of resilience. And so they've directly connected the skills of resilience to those specific challenges, and they've got good evidence on the reduction of it. Christian, what are your thoughts as we talk through it? What are some of the models that you've seen that you feel like have been effective, or maybe even in your own practice, where you've taken these skills and connected, and this approach and connected it to some of those specific challenges?
Yeah, the one thing I really like is the diversity of whether you can do this. You can do this one-on-one. You can do this in a group setting. You can identify the kids that you're most concerned about. So I mean, the models, there's a lot of different ways that you can apply this. One thing that I have found really effective is to teach the tools to the kids, and then have the kids be able to explain it to some of their peers, to talk about how they're using it in their life. And when they hear it from their peers, that is a big X factor, when they get insight from each other. Me as a clinician, I can share it, but when they really understand these skills and they share them with their friends, we have a lot of different, Jason can speak to more, we have a lot of different ways that it can be delivered, that the model can work so many different ways. A lot of schools are using it as the behavioral plan for the IEP. There's so many different ways that it can be used.
Yeah, let me show you. I can show you kind of a quick overview of like a quick example of how you might teach like a specific skill of resilience. Let me pull up my different set of slides here. And so, for example, when it comes to the idea of like problem solving, maybe we want to help our students become better problem solvers. Or actually, maybe we want to, I'm going to circle back to that discussion of the wall that David mentioned, because he mentioned that as a kind of as a valuable visual metaphor. So I'm going to pull that up, and then I'll show you kind of quickly like an example of how we can make that interaction engaging and meaningful. So let me open up slides with the wall here. And so to go back to that idea where we have so many students that have kind of a block in front of their vision. I'm having a little bit of issue with the slide here. There we go. So I'm going to go back to this image of the wall that David mentioned. There we go. Tina, there is actually, I'll highlight that, and the parent engagement component. I'm glad you mentioned that. We're actually going to share it with you. I'll give you a QR code where we'll give you part of our parent engagement component that you can use. But in this idea of the wall, we have our students. So many are kind of on that ground level, and they have a very limited view, and they may have all these challenges in front of them, blocking their field of vision. So the idea with a visual metaphor is you ask engaging questions to help individuals see their life within the visual metaphor. And then as we go through it, you can start to kind of see a pattern that we can follow that can help us make some type of change or adjustment. So in this case, as we apply the skills of resilience that we would have taught prior to this, that student on top of the wall still has challenges in his life, but he has a different field of vision. He's starting to see things differently. So now it becomes this question of what does it actually mean to see things differently? So here's an example of an activity. We do use tons of activities that represents that shift in perspective. So for this, I'm going to put up a paragraph. I'm going to give you 15 seconds to read the paragraph. And what I want you to do is count the number of F's, F as in Frank. Count the number of F's that are in the paragraph. Keep your answer to yourself until I tell you what to do with it, but you're only going to have 15 seconds to count them. So get your counting ready. On your marks, get set, go. And 15 seconds is up. 15 seconds goes very fast. Now I'm going to count it down. I'm going to say 3, 2, 1, go. When I say go, I want everybody to type into the chat the number of F's that you counted. 3, 2, 1, go. All right, so we got a little bit of a problem here, right? All of us had this thing in front of us, this same paragraph in front of us, and I'm seeing answers that vary from 2 all the way to 8. So something happened where not all of us saw this thing the same way. Not all of us experienced it the same way. So I'm going to do a magic trick now, and I'm going to see if I can magically create a scenario where we can adjust how we may have seen that. Before I do that, if you counted 7, give yourself a big round of applause. Looks like there were 4 of you. 4 of you out of about 40 that responded got the answer right. Let's look at it together now. It is BG. BG's been in my trainings before. So there's the 7. So now whenever we do an activity, we always want to process the experience and see if we can learn something from it, connect it to some ideas. So let's process together. I'll just kind of combine these first two. Everybody had the same paragraph, but there were a whole bunch of different answers. Anybody willing to share what caused you to perhaps not count all of the F's, or do any of you have any guesses or opinions as to why there were so many different answers? You can respond in the chat. So the time limit, time limitation creates a stress where maybe we rush or we hurry. Yeah, that time definitely makes it more difficult. Okay, so maybe your focus was on one thing when it needed to also be on another one. Miss the simple words. The of is always the trickiest one for a few reasons. In the word of, phonetically, the F makes a V sound. It's at the end of the word. And then for many of us that have had to read a lot of pages of text, we've trained our brains that we can fly past words like of because they aren't as significant in a sentence. So lots of different reasons, but the bottom line is it impacted how we viewed the thing. So not being able to see all the F's is sometimes similar to having a limited view. And all of the reasons you shared that caused us to miss some of the F's in the paragraph can also be reasons that cause us to perhaps not see the complete picture in life towards things. And it also impacts how we view our problems and our challenges. So one of the very first steps towards becoming resilient is to recognize that we can change our perspective. We can change how we view different things in our life, including challenges and problems. And the very first step towards being resilient is adjusting our perspective to begin to see things differently. So that's a very quick, very simple example of how we can take a visual metaphor, connect it to a key concept, self-efficacy and perspective, and then use a simple activity to help draw that concept experientially out. And so now all of you, with the exception of the 4 that got 7 right, literally experienced a change in perspective from the first time you viewed the paragraph to the second time. Then we would expand that out and talk about what it means to actually change our perspective in life towards challenges or circumstances that may be going on in our lives or around us. So that's kind of a big picture view on it. Christian, what has your experience been as far as seeing student perspective shift as you've started to share some of these concepts with them?
Yeah, biggest thing is it kind of gives them a language to what they're experiencing in life. For example, going back to that reality ride, when kids would, when I was doing this in a mental health setting, when kids would get done doing that metaphor with me, they'd jump in the car with their mom, and mom would say, "What did you do today?" And the kid would go, "Well, mom, look, these are my uphill challenges. This is what's getting me in trouble. These are the consequences. This is what I keep doing over and over." So again, it gives them a language around mental health. I'm a clinical social worker, and sometimes these theories are abstract to me. So Jason, I think the big thing is just that language that they can talk to their peers about. They can explain it back to their parents. It takes something, mental health is very theoretical, very abstract sometimes. And it takes, evidence-based mental health and makes it practical. We're using brief solution-focused therapy, reality therapy, strength-based counseling in a visual delivery system. So we kind of big picture, we took some of the most evidence-based mental health practice and started delivering it in a multimedia delivery system. This current generation spending 8 to 12 hours a day engaged in some type of media, some type of online stuff. And so it really is that relevancy component, which is so important. The one thing I want to emphasize too, Jason, is, you've been talking a lot about, the skills of resilience. That activity Jason just did helps build those skills. And but one thing that we really have that's powerful is we show people where resilience comes from internally, that internal resilience. That's my book, The Resilience Breakthrough, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. I know we're going to be talking about that next week, the 4 sources of resilience, something called relational resilience, street resilience, resource, and rock bottom resilience. We'll be focused on, I think it's a week from today, next Thursday.
Yeah,
We'll
just a little teaser.
Yeah.
We're going to do a webinar next week, and we're going to do a deep dive into this 4-source model of resilience. It's very complementary to the Y-Try approach to skills, and this really digs into and explores the sources of resilience. It's a really useful model for anybody that works with youth, or for understanding resilience in your own life as well.
Yeah. And by the way, if anybody is interested, things slow down during the holidays. If anybody out there would like to have a free, 1-hour webinar on resilience on the book, we've over 150,000 copies of this book now are in print across the world. And so if you, especially my friends in Ireland, if you want a free demo online, let me know. I would love to come share the resilience. You can see it next week too, and kind of make a decision how you want to use it. If you'd like to have a free presentation for about an hour on where resilience comes from internally. I read lots of books on resilience that talked about the attributes: hard work, determination, perseverance, all those why-try skills. Those are the skills of resilience. But I think what we have as special is it's the only book that will show you where resilience comes from internally. Give you one quick example. There's something called street resilience, where you use any type of judgment, disrespect. I'll say to kids, do you feel disrespected? Almost every child says yes. And I show them how to use that disrespect, that judgment, is a reason to become a greater human being, that you don't have to go negative. If someone hurts you, you don't have to hurt them. You can take that disrespect and do really positive things with it. So that's street resilience.
Love it. Great teaser for next week. It'll be a fun discussion, especially for those of you that may not have seen our 4-source model of resilience before. I appreciate one of you mentioned the parent supplement. So if you're interested in getting our resilience bundle, which includes a parent guide to resilience, which takes our model and converts it into language that is written specifically towards parents. We've got an interactive website that provides that. It's a parent resource you can include in your own web page of resources. You can share it. There's no paywall in front of it. It's a really great, really nice free parent resource, as well as some additional resilience resources. We have this bundle available if you want to hit the QR code. And then, as Christian mentioned, he is willing to do, it's a pretty generous offer. He's willing to do a resilience workshop for your staff, for your group. If you can get a group together, feel free to email me, jason@ytry.org, if you're interested in having Christian do a 1 hour virtual resilience workshop. And I can get you in contact with the person that schedules those for Christian. But he's willing to do those for a 1 hour resilience workshop for free if you can get a group together that can meet virtually for him to meet up with. We've done a couple of those for some local groups that have been awesome. They've been really fun events, and you get a good heavy dose of Christian and his knowledge and information on that resilience model. The other thing I want to mention, we do have one of the things that's been particularly effective towards both the challenge of engagement and reducing absenteeism is our transformational leadership toolkit. That's a workshop we do specifically focusing on improving relationships and engagement. It includes a leadership toolkit for leadership to be able to teach some concepts and review concepts throughout the year that help reinforce the initial workshop concepts. It's been a really effective model in helping reduce those as well. So huge thank you to everybody for showing up. I think our time's about up. Christian, David, do either of you have any parting thoughts before I wrap this up?
The sun comes through the darkest clouds. There we go.
How about you, David?
I just want to say that I really think that this program is going to make a huge difference in improving attendance in California. We have so many kids that are disengaged, and we need to bring them back from the pandemic.
Amen. And the exciting thing is we've seen it. I'm so glad, David, that you mentioned Tulare County. I really do consider them a gold standard, not just in California, but within the country. What they're doing to improve engagement and reduce absenteeism, and some of the work they're doing in prevention is really remarkable. And I think what's remarkable about it is it's a pretty humble group of educators. If you met with them, it would remind you of educators that you know locally. But what makes them remarkable is how unified they are with purpose and vision of what they're doing, and also how unified they are with what skills they're going to teach and how they're going to go about and teach it. And it's made a real impact. It has made a remarkable impact on these challenges, and I just can't sing their praises enough. And David, I sing your praises as well, because I know you're a humble educator as well, but you have and you continue to make a big difference in these areas in your state. And there's a lot of kids that are needing support in your home state of California, just like there are in all 49 other states. And so I just feel grateful to be able to rub shoulders with some of the real great ones, and really appreciate you hopping on here and sharing some of your insight as well, David.
Yeah, Jason, I would like to add to that.
Jason.
David is definitely one of my early mentors. Probably almost 15 years ago, 18 years ago. He saw me when I was a young social worker, believed in me early in my career. And so he's the real deal. He's very humble. He's not going to tell you. He's impacted hundreds of thousands of kids in California, if not over 1 million children in California. That's an understatement, actually. He's probably done way more than that because of the size of California. but he's the real deal. He's retired. He's still in the fight. He cares greatly, and I hope to follow in his footsteps. You know, every once in a while, I think, man, I'll maybe retire from this type of work, and then I see David, and I'm like, I'm doing this till I'm 6 feet under, man. He's the real deal because he does it because he's passionate about children. So again, I want to honor the great David Copperroot. So he's the real deal. The other thing, you guys, I mean, he's literally one of the top mental health consultants in California. If you get a hold of us or just text Jason, I can maybe talk David into even doing some consulting for you, or you know, talking to your team as well. And so he's the real deal. Again, one of my mentors. And so I don't want to speak for David, but if you text or email Jason, you know, I could get David. I might be able to even talk David to coming on with me. If you have me come to a resilience thing, David might be able to pop on with me too. So let me know. Let me know if that's something you're interested in, and feel free to put in the chat window, you know, how we were helpful, what we could do different, what you would like us to focus on in a webinar. Feel free to put a request. Jason is a psychologist. He's very broad in what he does, and the other thing is, if you want Jason as a consultant, Jason consults. He's our head of training. He consults in lots of districts. I know his schedule slows down. His schedule does slow down in the next 2 weeks. And if you want Jason to do some consulting for your district, you know, you can just email Jason and say, Jason, can I have a half hour of your time? That's he'll give you 30 minutes between now and probably December 20th. You could probably access Jason for 30 minutes. So he's the real deal. And so, and literally, you guys, he consults with thousands of school districts. He's not going to tell you that. And so, yeah, please access Jason as a resource. And yeah, please put in the chat window any ideas for any other webinars that you would like, or what you liked, and what we could do to improve. Thank you, guys. You guys are my heroes. Thanks for fighting the fight for these students. There's no more important time. I've been doing this for 27 years. I've never seen a more important time to advocate for students, especially marginalized students. There's no more important time than right now. So thanks for being heroes.
Hey, thank you all. Thanks everybody for showing up. Thanks for doing the good work. It's a tough time in education, and December is always a pretty exciting month between the fall break and the Christmas break. And so hope you're staying sane. Hopefully you feel a little bit of a boost showing up to be part of this community. Show up next week. I think you'll like our resilience model. If you haven't seen it before, tell your friends, bring some friends, hop on, and we'll have a fun discussion next week. Sharon, I saw your question. We recorded this, so we'll send out a recording. You can email me, jason@whytry.org, if you don't see it by next week. But huge thank you to everybody for showing up. Hope you have a great weekend.